content over everything.
Probably got about half an hour.
What time is it now?
It's 10 past 2.
Do you want to do a half an hour conversation on something?
Let's do it.
All right.
On what?
I don't know.
I think last debate you two had.
Well, there's more a discussion, really.
Last discussion.
I'm not gonna let up on you.
I think
You was going gently on me.
I was going easy on you last time.
actually last time Bob was easier than you.
Really?
I was disappointed with Bob.
Yeah, but back couldn't take that. Once I get my back, I would have actually loved to be in that discussion. There's a lot of things that I thought.
You're going to be using your stand.
Yeah, I was just telling Leon, brother, my back is. I'm taking
back's finally
antibiotics.
gone out.
I don't even know what we're talking about.
Well, let's just talk.
That's how we like it at Speaker's Corner.
So
We're
Spontaneous.
freestyling. We're gonna have to top of the dome.
Do we need to trigger you?
I mean, I want to talk a bit more about your worldview today.
I'm gonna talk about a little bit more about your work.
All right, that's fine. So you're are we ready to go, guys? Are we?
I'm rolling still.
Right.
I've been rolling.
JC's not rolling. Leon's ready. You can tell.
That's why we do not
used
subscribe.
to the tribe.
Because you're not quick.
subscribe, bro. That's it.
You're not
It's new
subscribed.
technology. It's getting used to it. It's new technology.
That's the
Tripod.
difference between soccer films and the others. You get quality between quantity.
Yeah,
No, you get quality on COE.
yeah.
Equally.
Crazy.
Apart from when you're like putting the jihadis on, you know,
Yeah, COE. We're gonna have to talk
all
to
them,
Leon
all them
about giving
jihadis that you got over
platforms.
here.
Contradicting
It's like
yourself now. You say you get quality.
talking- yeah, it's quality for the jihadis, I guess, but it's not quality for me.
Yeah.
Welcome.
So,
All work is good work.
are we good?
Yeah.
You think you can hear?
So, Sarah, yeah, just tell us a little bit more about your worldview, where you stand today.
In what sense?
Like your belief about gods or God or
Okay,
identity. I know that's a big issue for you, identity.
God, let's talk about God.
All right,
God is, for me, human beings' alter ego.
go on.
Human beings created God in an effort to try and understand the things that they could not understand.
Yeah.
There are things human beings agree on, right? So if we say, is everything connected?
Yeah.
And, is it all divine? You'll get many different religions, right, saying that everything is connected and it's all divine. And you could probably agree on that. So I don't know. Would you agree that everything's connected, it's all divine? It's all God, God is in everything?
No, I
things
don't
are-
believe in that.
You don't believe in that?
No.
Okay.
As a Christian.
So there will be many different systems that may say that. So there are systems that people agree upon.
Yeah.
I think essentially yourself and the Muslims would agree upon one God,
Yes.
right? You'd agree upon that,
Yeah, there's only one God.
right? But then what happens is human beings start getting involved,
Yeah.
and then the stories start to change. No, this one God that we all agree upon done this. No, he never done that. He done this. No, he never done that. He said that, and he said no, he never said that to them. He said that to them. So human beings start getting involved in the conversation, and then it just goes.
So
Like that.
I would suggest to you that's a characterization of the history of religion. So, for example, there's no connection between Islam and Christianity.
None.
None. No, it is simply a case that
So
Muhammad.
Abraham doesn't connect them.
No, absolutely not. Ishmael, and
A Muslim would
Muhammad,
probably beg to disagree. With
Of course they would, but there's no evidence that links Muhammad to Ishmael. It's simply an assertion
right?
that Muhammad is a descendant of Ishmael. That is an
Most
assertion.
of what's in the religious books are assertions.
Right. Well, there's a couple of different points that you've raised. I just want to talk about your characterization of religion, because the fact of the matter is there are many and various different religions that teach different things, and that actually belief in one God was quite a latecomer in terms of religion.
In what sense? In human history?
In human history, and evidently so.
Not from my research.
What do you think is the earliest belief?
You
in
can
one
go
God?
to. Okay, so trying to understand pantheistic type religions. I don't know if you've done any research into like pantheistic type religions. What you will find is essentially, if you want to think of it like the Catholic Church, they have saints as well as God. Do you see what I'm saying?
Go on.
Ish.
Yeah.
So when you look into some pantheistic, not all, but some pantheistic religions, you will find a Godhead. You will find God is called X, right? And then you will have a pantheon similar to what you would call saints in the Catholic Church. that God gets to do certain works for the people. So a lot of people saw that and saw the pantheon and said, ah, look, they're worshipping multiple gods. Not realizing that essentially if you go into the actual religion, there is one God with a pantheon of, you could call them demigods.
Could you give me an example of this?
Okay, so you have the Necha or the Netaru. So the Netaru in the Nile Valley, you have different people call them principles. So you have the god of justice or the god of equality or the god of whatever.
Yeah.
But there is still essentially one god, what they call the hidden. They will call God the hidden. Right?
What is the text that this
You can go to
religion
the Egyptian walls. You can go to the Book of the Dead or the book of coming forth by day and by night.
Yeah.
You can literally it will take some time. You have to study the philosophies and opinions of the spiritual systems of the place. But what I'm trying to say is essentially one God is connected to the demigods, if that makes sense. And the demigods are the one God and the one God demigods. I know it can be a little bit confusing.
I do get that concept because, I studied religion and Hinduism as something like that.
Right.
Modern day in Hinduism, not the Hinduism that predates colonialism. But I guess what I'm saying to you is that religions make distinct claims. Mm-hmm. Now, you can categorize religions in different ways. There's multiple different ways you can categorize religions. Sociologists, psychologists, historians, political scientists, they've all used different frameworks to understand and categorize religion. And religious studies actually applies them all. Okay? Mm-hmm. And so, to use a form of categorization by their factualness, for instance. There are some religions that claim to be rooted in history, and there are some religions that are claimed to be rooted in mythology. So an example of a mythological religion would be the ancient Viking mythologies. Odin, Thor, Balder, I can't remember any of the names of their gods, Loki, and this was a mythological faith.
Right.
In that the Vikings believed that these beings were real, but the stories that they hold
that surrounded them.
Yeah, they don't believe that they happened at some point in history.
Right.
They codified values that were then being transmitted to the Vikings about heroism, about fighting in battle, about being brave. Christianity, by comparison, is a faith that claims to be rooted in history. Which means that someone like yourself, an objective observer, can investigate the claims of the Christian faith to find if they are true or not.
Right.
Okay.
But you won't find all of them.
So what is the central claim of the Christian faith?
That Jesus Christ is the Son of God and he came to wash away people's sins.
Very close.
That's what I know Christianity to be.
Christianity's central claim is that Christ rose from the dead.
Christ rose from the dead, okay.
That is the central claim of the Christian faith. Because what that does, and this is an apostolic argument, it was used by Paul. Paul said that if Christ didn't rise from the dead,
who didn't meet Christ, by the way?
He had a vision of Christ. But
he didn't meet him?
Not in person in the same way that I'm meeting you. But I don't believe that proves anything. He
had a vision.
Allow me to finish what I'm saying. So Paul is saying that if Christ didn't rise from the dead, then everything that is being taught by the apostles is in vain, and we might as well go out, get drunk, and have a good time. That's literally what he says.
Right.
So the apostolic tradition is this, that everything I believe about Jesus Christ is validated by the resurrection.
By Paul's vision?
By the resurrection.
Okay, but you spoke about Paul. You can't find evidence for a resurrection. You have to literally believe the claims of the people that speak about the resurrection.
So let's look at that. The very, very first Christians, okay, and this is an argument that is agreed upon by Dr. Bart Ehrman, Dr. Bruce Metzger, Dr. Daniel Wallace, Dr. N.T. Wright, Dr. Ryan Brown, the list of scholars I can quote.
The list of doctors don't impress me.
But what I'm pointing to,
go on.
Is that the scholarship universally agrees that in the first century, a group of people were convinced to their heart and soul that Jesus had risen from the dead.
Correct.
So my question to you, if we accept that that claim is a fact in history, that these people claimed that Jesus had risen
Yeah, they
from
claimed
the
it.
dead.
They claimed it. Yeah.
Yeah, and no one preceding them made that claim.
Right.
The question that I put to you and to anyone else who's watching
They claim to be
is
witnesses.
what convinced them.
I don't know.
So, let's speculate.
I don't know.
Let's speculate.
Right.
You're a rational man, I'm a rational man.
Yeah.
And people in the first century were also rational. Mm-hmm. Let's not characterize people from the past and saying that they are dumb and we are smart, because that's not how it worked. People understood what death meant in the first century just like we do today.
Right.
In fact, they were more familiar with death than we are because
Right.
they saw it daily. Yeah.
Right.
They knew, just as we know, people do not rise from the dead.
Right.
They had it as a belief. Some Jews had it as a belief, like the Sadducees,
Right.
that at some future point in history, people would rise from the dead. But there was nothing in the culture of the first century to condition those first Christians, those
Right.
first Jewish Christians, to believe that Jesus had risen from the dead.
Okay.
So speculate with me, Sarah.
Yeah.
What could convince them? What could convince
That
you?
they thought they saw a man rise from the dead.
That, yes.
Yeah.
What could convince them?
That they thought they saw a white man rise from the dead.
Right, but why would they think that?
Because they thought they saw that.
So,
Okay.
what would convince you that a man has risen from the dead?
That a man rose from one. That it looked like a man rose from the dead, of course.
Wouldn't you also predicate that you knew he died?
Yes, of course.
Right. Okay.
But I said, but there's a. You can go to my YouTube channel right now, and I'm speaking to a pastor.
Yeah.
And he says he saw a man rise from the dead.
Yeah.
He says it with his own eyes that him and his whole congregation saw a dead man get up and walk from the dead.
Yes.
And if those people are all convinced, am I supposed to believe them?
Are you supposed to believe them? Well, it's certainly
Just because they
it's
say that they
certainly
saw
a
a man
strong
get
claim,
up and
isn't
rise
it?
from- It's a fantastic claim.
Yeah.
Outlandish.
It is an outlandish claim.
Fantastic outlandish claim.
Yeah. So he's giving a testimony that he has seen a man rise from the dead.
Yes.
The first apostles are
He
giving
said
a
after
testimony.
he said at least after a month or two.
Right. So, I mean, I don't know this pastor, I don't know his claims. I don't know his pastor, I don't know his claims. We know...
Go onto Sarah Hagabi's channel.
I would
and
like
see.
to meet this pastor myself.
He's a preacher. It's called Sarah versus the Preacher.
Right. I would like to meet this pastor myself because I would like to meet the person that he rose from the dead.
That's
So-
what I said. I said I'm going to get him. I'm going to interview him next.
Yeah.
I'll interview the guy that rose from the dead.
Absolutely. So, we agree that people that are making this claim are people that believe that they've seen it.
Yes,
Right.
100%.
So, I would like, in terms of a historical inquiry, because we are talking about something that happened in the past,
Right?
the way that you investigate something in history is that you look for that narrative that has what we call, what's it called? Oh, do you know something? It's just slipped my mind now. It has explanatory power. So it takes all the available evidence and it says, what is the explanation that we can give to all this available evidence that explains all the facts that we know about?
I hope I don't get my phone call during this, but go on.
That's fine.
Go
If
on.
you need to take a phone call, you need to.
No, if I get the phone call, I got to run. But go on.
Right. So my point to you is that the central claim of the Christian faith is that the very first Christians claimed that Christ rose from the dead.
Correct.
Yeah. We have to deal with why.
Why they would claim that?
Yes.
Just like I can deal with why the pastor said that their congregation
Yeah.
saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah, why?
Right. So
Could they have been deluded?
could they have been deluded?
Yes.
Right. So let's look at that.
Yes.
Let's look at that. If they were deluded,
Yes.
yeah, and they went around preaching that Christ had risen from the dead, then that would mean that there would still be a tomb in a body. Sorry, there would still be a body in a tomb. Let's
No,
get
but
it
he's
right.
gone, ain't he? Christ, he's gone.
Hold on, but we're saying they're deluded, which means that there was no resurrection.
No, they can be deluded as to, okay, the story goes, they saw a man die,
Yes.
he rose, and he went,
Yes.
yeah?
But the,
So if I come to you and say, listen, we saw a man go, you're going to be like, all right, where is he? You can be like, obviously he's there.
yeah, but
he's not here, he's
but
there,
but
obviously.
your argument is that they're deluded, which means that if they're deluded, we still have got a corpse.
Well, it's a story, isn't it?
It's a story.
No, there's no corpse.
Well, why isn't
Because
there a
it's a story.
corpse? Why isn't there a
Because
corpse?
it's a story. It's
But
not.
why isn't there a corpse?
I don't know. They could have chopped him up into little pieces and hid him in the back garden. I don't know why
All right.
there's no corpse.
So what you I mean,
I don't know. I'm
mean-
going with what is more plausible than not. It's more
right.
plausible according to us, okay? Like you said, we don't know of any human being that's died and risen. We don't know of one, do we?
I know of one. Jesus Christ.
You believe in
I know
one?
of a few actually.
You believe in one?
Lazarus, he was another one.
Yeah, you believe that
There's
too.
quite
But
a
I'm
few
saying
actually people in
in
history
your
that rose from the
experience, in our experience as human beings, that is not a day-to-day occurrence, okay? It's not something that we
No,
know
it's
to,
not a regular
something that we
occurrence.
know to exist. So
Yeah.
if somebody comes with that kind of story, it has to be believed
Yes.
more than it has to be because we can't see it.
Yeah,
right?
but I'm not-
It just has to be believed.
But I'm not asking you about why the next generation of Christians believe
Believe it. You're asking
I'm
about why
asking about
the
the
specific
very
people.
first people believed it.
Same reason why I guess this pastors and this congregation believed it, because they thought they saw it.
Okay,
They thought they
so
saw
they
it.
thought they saw it.
Right, yeah.
So my point is that this claim is rooted in a real experience.
In something that people thought they saw, yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic.
So if they really saw it, but you're saying that it didn't really happen,
No, I'm saying that they think they saw it. Okay, there's a couple
but
possibilities.
did it really happen?
There's a couple possibilities.
Go on.
They could have thought they saw it,
Yeah.
or they could all be lying to you.
Right.
They could have made it up,
Yeah.
right, and could all be lying to you, saying, listen, guys, this is what we're going to do. We're going to tell people this.
Yeah.
That's possible.
So let's
Human beings make up lies.
Now, here's the thing. Here's what I would invite you to do, Sarah. I will consider sincerely any counter hypothesis that you want to give, so long as you will consider seriously the possibility that it really happened.
No, I can't consider that.
Right.
I
Now,
can't consider that.
you can't consider that.
No.
Explain to me why you cannot consider the possibility that it really happened.
Because we know as human beings.
Do we?
Yes, we know. Of course we do.
What do we know?
We know that human beings die. All of them.
Yeah? Are
They
you saying
don't rise from the dead.
Are you saying people don't rise from the dead?
Yes, that's
So
exactly
we
what I'm
can't
saying.
resuscitate people.
Yeah, if you use a bloody resuscitation machine.
People can be clinically dead and they can be resuscitated.
I agree, but Jesus Christ never had never said clear
Yeah, agreed. It's miraculous.
when it came to
It
Jesus
is
Christ.
miraculous.
No.
It is
Right.
miraculous.
But I'm saying we know we can do it like that.
So we do
Using-
know that people can rise from the dead.
Yes, using certain machines.
Yes.
But Jesus never had a resuscitation machine.
So I agree. There was no resuscitation machine involved. Christ
Right.
was not resuscitated.
Not unless
he
they
was
had
resurrected.
fantastic technology back then.
He was dead, and on the third day he rose again from the dead. That is my belief.
That's your belief.
That is my
Fantastic.
belief. Yeah, that is my belief. I'm not denying it. That is my belief. And my belief is founded upon the teachings of the first apostles. Now, I just want to dig into your presupposition that we know that this can't happen.
We do though. All human beings. I'm going to ask every human being here if
Yeah.
they know of a person that's died and risen from the dead.
Shall we ask them?
Yeah, let's ask them.
Right. Can you put your hand up if you know that someone has risen from the dead in the past? Okay.
You know that.
Yep.
What's that person's name?
Yeah. And please know, I'm guessing, brother, you're a Muslim.
Great-grandfather.
Yeah. So it's not just a Christian belief.
Who was that person, please? No, but you don't know that. You
We
believe
do know
That's
that.
the-
We have evidence, my
No,
friend.
you believe
Wait,
it.
No, we've got evidence. There's
I
textual evidence.
know people.
Right.
There's
My
a
point.
difference
Hold on.
between
Let's-
belief and
let-
knowing
let's not-
something,
let's Not all
guys.
jump on, let's not all jump on Sarah. My point to you,
There's a
Sarah.
difference in belief and knowing.
My point to you, Sarah.
be
knowledge,
honest.
Actually, knowledge is a subcategory of belief. But
The question
and
is,
I would invite you to
what
look
was
into
the
that.
what was the benefit?
Wait,
to
brother,
the
brother,
apostles?
it's okay. So my point.
Can we ask the question again? Please, everyone can be honest.
Everyone was just honest.
No, they weren't being honest.
Everyone was just honest, and you saw
You
that the
said, does
majority of people listening put their hand
anyone
up.
know? Not believe now. Does anyone
Yes.
know that a person rose from the dead?
Knowledge is a subcategory of belief.
No.
It
knowledge,
is.
Knowledge is to know something, to prove something.
Stop. Because what you've just done is an epistemological fallacy.
Don't get Hamza on me.
Yeah, I'm not Hamza.
It's a logical fallacy.
I am not.
It's a logical
I am not the
fallacy,
money
straw
hamster.
man.
I'm not the money hamster. This is not right.
Go on, Bob.
Because the question is, how do we know what we know?
No, the question is, how do you know Jesus Christ rose from the dead?
Correct. But what you're saying is that we can only know things if we can prove them.
Well, we can know things based on our own experience.
That is one way of knowing.
And in our experience, like I said, as human beings, in our experience, we don't know of anyone that's done that.
We do. We have historical accounts and we have modern accounts. There is. I remember watching
It's going to get a
something.
little bit frustrating for me.
I feel that it is. But it's because I think that, and I say this with the greatest respect, but
Because that book has to be relied upon via belief.
Oh, hold on. The belief was there before the book.
Yeah, because the people said it.
Yeah.
And there are people that followed them before the book was actually, you know,
Written.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
So,
And, yeah,
so
I-
my
I
faith is
totally
not
agree.
my faith is not built on the book. My faith is
It's
built
built on
upon the
their-
belief that created the book.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Your stance is built upon what the people of the time said about what they thought they saw.
And then created a community and wrote all of these texts in the New Testament
Fantastic.
based upon that experience.
And that is a reliable source for you.
Right, let me explain some of the reasons why it's reliable. One, because you know the New Testament is 27 books. You know that these books, I'm guessing you know that it's 27 books.
Are you talking about the Ethiopian Bible?
I know
or
the
are we talking
Ethiopian,
about
the
the
Ethiopian-
Catholic Bible?
No,
Bob?
well, actually, the Catholic and Protestant New Testament is the same. The Ethiopian text of the New Testament is the same, but they also include a church liturgical book as part of all the books that they give to people.
So
as
it's the
part of
same but different. There's a little difference,
It is the same. Yes.
but there's a little difference.
There is differences in canon, but I think
Right, but if you've got
you're
eight-
at risk confusing issues here.
Okay, go on.
You're going to confuse issues.
All right, go on. I'll let you go.
So my point to you is that the literature of the New Testament, the letters, the Gospels, and the authors of them
Mm-hmm.
were writing independently of one another.
Right, okay.
Okay,
Then they were all collected and put there.
much later.
Yeah.
Much later. So what we have are historical communities that came independently to this same knowledge,
Right,
based upon the preaching of the people that were delivering that knowledge.
correct.
And something radicalized those first people, yeah, so much so that they were willing to give their lives to maintain this truth.
Right.
You know Peter was martyred for it. Now, do you know of many people in history who have died for something that they know is a lie?
No. Because they believe it in their heart.
Yeah. So,
Just like the Muslims do.
So one
they'll,
of-
they'll jihad you one time.
okay, so
Yeah,
one...
because they believe in their heart,
Yeah.
that, this is what needs to be done.
Right, so...
They don't believe it's a lie.
So what we've got is your first argument is based upon the idea that it was all delusion. Okay, now we
Could have
didn't really get to press in onto that one, so maybe we'll
Could
come
have
back to it. Your second argument is based upon the idea that it was a lie, a deceit.
Could have been,
That they
yeah.
chopped up the body and then went around preaching.
Could have happened.
Now, if they
Or there was nobody.
hold on, if they died for what they believed to be true, and we know that people die for what they believe to be true all the time.
The first people.
The first Christians, Peter, Paul, it's historically a fact that they were martyred. It's indisputable.
Yeah, but you have to. Yeah, but if we go back to Paul, like I said, Paul had a vision. He didn't meet
Yes.
Jesus Christ. Okay, so he doesn't. So now you have to rely on Paul's vision.
No, it's not just Paul's vision.
No, I'm just saying, Paul as a person. If Paul's saying I had a vision of Christ,
Yeah.
right? Now as a reader of this book, saying, oh look at what Paul wrote.
Yeah.
We're relying upon what Paul's vision is now.
Yeah.
Certain parts of it. Now I could have a vision tomorrow, Bob, about some stuff.
Yeah.
You don't have to rely upon my vision.
Right.
Or if you choose to follow my vision, that's on you.
Let's just address this Paul's vision thing. Okay? The Christian faith is not built just on Paul's vision.
A lot of the New Testament is built up on Paul's writing.
A lot of Paul's writings ends
Yeah,
up in
yeah.
the New Testament.
Yeah.
But he was already writing to a community that existed.
Right?
So that means that the belief predates Paul.
Yes.
So my belief in
So
the
could
resurrection.
Paul have been an FBI agent,
One second.
right?
Right.
Who saw people that had something and was like, I can capitalize on that.
Hold on. I can defend the resurrection without appealing to anything Paul wrote. Do you want me to do that?
Go ahead.
Right. So you know the Gospel of Mark?
Right?
Do you know who wrote Mark?
No, I would assume it was Mark. Then.
It was a guy called Mark,
Yeah, I would
who was the
assume
hearer of Peter. So this is a collection, a string of sermons or a string of teachings that are connected to Peter that Paul wrote down.
Mark.
Sorry, Mark wrote down, that Mark wrote down. And he speaks of Christ's resurrection. So listen to this. So he talks of the account of Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James and Salome, going to the temple to anoint the body according to Jewish custom. Okay? And entering the tomb, so looking up, they saw that the stone had been rolled away although it was extremely large. And entering the tomb, they saw a young man
Right.
sitting at the right hand, wearing a white robe, and they were amazed. And he said to them, "Do not be amazed. You are looking for Jesus the Nazarene, who has been crucified. He has risen. He is not here. Behold, here is the place where they laid him." So the Gospel of Mark, which is written independently of Paul, speaks about the resurrection. I can defend the resurrection without appealing to Paul's evidence at all.
Okay.
Now, Luke is also an independent writer.
What about Matthew?
Matthew and Mark, there's some kind of crossover or cross-pollination between the two, and scholars dispute about how that cross-pollination is going on. But John, for instance, is also...
I'm trying to pull something up. But go on.
Yeah. And John is also an independent writer from Matthew and Paul. Now, just in the second letter of Peter, it reads, "For we did not follow cleverly devised tales when we made known to you the power and the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, but we were eyewitnesses of his majesty. For when he received honor and glory from God the Father, such an utterance as this was made to him by the majestic glory. This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. And we ourselves heard this utterance made from heaven when we were with him on the holy mountain." Now that's talking about the transfiguration.
The holy mountain. What mountain is it?
It was the Mount of the Transfiguration.
not the Mount of Olives.
No, I don't think it's the Mount of Olives.
Okay, go on.
So my point to you is that we have independent literary sources from
In the-
Paul
right.
in the New Testament that all speaks about eyewitness testimony to the resurrection. John writes this in the first letter. "What was from the beginning, what we have heard, what we have seen with our eyes, what we have looked at and touched with our hands concerning the word of life. And the life was manifested, and we have seen and testify and proclaim to you the eternal life, which was with the Father and was manifested to us. What we have seen and heard we proclaim to you also, so that you too may have fellowship with us. And indeed, our fellowship is with the Father and with his Son, Jesus Christ."
But this just sounds like good stories, though, bro.
Right. So if we're going back to... well, now the point is, when we're investigating something historically,
Right.
what we have to do is look at evidence. Agreed?
Yeah.
Right, because evidence helps us to establish facts, and then when we have facts, we can then come up with a narrative that explains those facts.
Right.
Right. Now, the strongest way to make any historical evidence, any historical argument, is when you have different streams of evidence that corroborate one another.
Okay.
So, for example, it's undeniable that Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon.
Okay, because you have various different types of evidence from various different places that state this, yeah?
Yeah, we have Roman evidence, and we have the evidence of the Celts, the people that experienced the invasion.
However, the claim about crossing the Rubicon, the claim about wars,
Oh, that was Gaelic. Sorry, Gaelic. Gaelic. Yeah, Rubicon. No, it was Italy. What am I talking about? Sorry. Anyway, go on.
the claims are not extraordinary claims.
Yes.
They're ordinary claims.
Right.
So ordinary claims are more likely to be believed,
Yes.
right, than extraordinary claims.
Agreed.
A man resurrecting from the dead
Yep.
is an extraordinary claim. Bob.
Absolutely.
It's a fantastic story.
Right. So, what is the highest proof? What higher proof can a man give to you that he is convinced of the reality of this experience for himself than dying for it?
None.
Right. So the first apostles, the very first, Peter, Paul, Thaddeus, James, John, but not John, he didn't die. Thomas, they died for it. We know where Thomas died, in India.
Right, but the human mind is a very interesting thing.
Yeah.
I study psychology and I study the way what human beings can convince themselves of.
Yeah.
So there are literally religions out there where human beings think that hurting themselves, because you said killing yourself or dying for something, shows how much you must believe in something.
Agreed.
Right?
Yes.
Would you also say that physically hurting yourself could be a very convincing argument true.
Absolutely, that you believe
That
something
you believe something is true.
Believe something is
right,
true.
there are religions that cut themselves.
Absolutely, I know.
Okay, because of what they believe it to be true.
Yep.
So that's all in the human mind. The human mind can convince itself that something is true and do and exhibit behaviors based on how true they feel that is. So I could cut myself now for my
Exactly.
religion.
So
It doesn't make my belief actually true, though.
So the question that you have to tackle is not what convinces me, because what convinces
them?
What
Is that what you're saying?
convinced the very, very first Christians, the very first people in history?
I don't know. They thought they saw it, Bob. We said this.
Right,
They thought
they saw it. Why?
Because that's what they thought they saw. I don't know.
And here's where I have a problem with your argument, sorry, is because a priori you are saying it cannot be possible that a man rose from the dead.
No, not according to what we know.
Right.
Yeah.
Not according to what we know.
According to what who knows?
Human beings.
Human beings, a huge number. If we did a quick census of this crowd, I bet I would actually be in the majority about who believes that Jesus Christ rose from the
Talk
dead.
about beliefs.
Flat earthers here every week, man.
Yeah. So
Human beings believe a lot of things.
they do.
Right. They believe a lot of things.
Some humans are so crazy they actually believe that there isn't a God.
Some human beings are so crazy that they think they were born inside a man's body and cut their penis off.
I know.
Crazy to me, but that's what they believe.
And some other people are so crazy they think that that's true. Now, but the fact of the matter is,
That's what I'm trying to say. So human beings can convince themselves
Of everything.
a lot of stuff, bro.
Absolutely
There are
they
men
can.
walking down the street with no genitalia and a wig on because
Right.
he said, I was born in the wrong body. He's totally convinced of that.
I get
He
that.
removed his genitalia.
I get that. So let's look at the sort of counterfactual evidence.
Psychological disorder, though.
Let's look at the counterfactual evidence, because
Could these people have been?
you're marshalling.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, hold on.
Sorry.
You are marshalling an argument, and the argument is that the first Christians were deluded. You're going back to
No,
the
I said it
deluded
could have
argument.
been. Could have been.
Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm treating your counter narrative with the seriousness that it deserves.
But that's what I'm trying to say. Essentially, I don't know why those people were convinced of that. I don't know that. What I do know is that they said it happened.
And I propose to you that the reason why they said it happened,
It's because it actually happened.
and bearing in mind they had every cultural disposition to disbelieve.
Right.
People in the first century were not more stupid than we are about the issue of death. They knew that when people died, they stayed dead. And yet something happened. Even though culturally only some Jews, the Sadducees, believed that at some distant point in the future there would be a sort of general resurrection. Some Jews came to be convinced, despite all the cultural narratives to the opposite, that a singular person rose from the dead.
Okay. So
And we have to seriously investigate why.
and the evidence for that is written down here and was espoused by the people before it was even written down here, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Right? Okay. Generally, people that follow this stuff, they believe what is written down in here.
Yeah.
Yeah? Generally.
Yeah.
So this is how I'm going to show how things in this book don't necessarily have to make sense.
Right.
If you could go to Matthew 24 for me
Matthew 24.
in this book, and I'll pull it up on mine.
Yeah.
You got to get with technology, Bob.
No, mate.
gotta
There's
get
something
with
nice about having a book in your hand.
Right.
Right.
So let's see if we're reading from the same. It's in Matthew 24, right?
Yeah, Matthew 24.
Okay, and it says, and Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and disciples came unto him,
Yeah.
and sought for him for shew him to the buildings of the temple, yeah?
Yep.
Okay, so disciples have come unto Jesus, yeah?
Yep.
And Jesus said unto them, so Jesus' words are now in red.
Yeah.
Do not you not see these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be
One stone left upon another,
right.
which will not be.
So this is
torn
on the
down.
Mount of Olives, right?
Yeah.
So if we go down,
Okay.
they've actually they've come unto Jesus, right?
Okay.
In this verse. And they've said in number 3,
Sorry, where does it say it's on the Mount of Olives? Oh, right.
No, number
As he
3,
was
yeah?
sitting.
On
So
the-
it's moved,
yeah, on the Mount of Olives,
the
right?
narrative has moved forward, yeah.
right, and he says here,
Yeah, on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him
Yeah.
privately saying, tell us, when will these things happen, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? Yeah.
So that's the question they asked him.
Yeah.
So during this verse,
Yep.
Jesus says a lot of things.
He does.
He says a lot of things.
He does.
And at the end
Which
of it,
incidentally declares his divinity, just
Right.
so you know.
and at the end of it, what does he say?
At the very end? Yeah, go on.
He says.
Yeah.
He talks about what will happen because I said, how will we know when the war's going to, or when the age is going to end?
Yeah.
He said, rumors of wars, pestilence, all
Yeah.
this kind of stuff, the sign of the coming man in the clouds, all this kind of stuff.
Yep.
And he ends with, verily I say unto you,
34.
34.
34.
This generation
Yep.
shall not pass
Yes.
until these things be fulfilled.
Agreed.
Who's he speaking to?
Right, he's speaking to the disciples.
That their generation
Yes.
is going to see all of that stuff.
Yes.
Has that generation seen all that
Right.
stuff?
Do you know the end of the age that it is talking about is the end of the old covenant age.
You see what he says in the King James? It says the end of the world.
It's talking well.
That says the end of the world.
And in Greek, world is not necessarily like the end of the terran, the earth.
Okay.
World can be the end of a system, because in English, to translate the Greek into English, you can also translate it.
So
as
are you
system of
saying
things.
that those disciples saw the end of a system?
Yes.
So they saw the wars, the pestilence, the rumors of wars.
Yes.
So they saw him coming in the clouds.
Right. So
They saw him do that.
Let me just address this point.
That means Jesus has already come.
May I finish? The apocalyptic vision.
Yes.
The apocalyptic vision that Christ is talking about speaks about things that are going to happen into the future and things that are going to happen at the time of the disciples. So the system that is coming to an end that Christ describes in these graphic terms is the end of the Old Testament, the end of the Old Covenant system.
He talks about the tribulation.
He does talk about
the Great Tribulation.
Yes.
And he said they would see the tribulation.
And Christians will see
No,
the tribulation.
he was talking to his disciples.
Exactly, and am I
Not
not
to-
a disciple?
Bob, don't do that. He's talking to his actual disciples,
He's
Bob.
talking to his
the
actual
12
disciples.
of them, not you, Bob.
Yes,
he
this
wasn't
is
talking to you
very
in
true.
2018, mate.
Yeah, but
he was
no,
talking
he
to
is.
his people 2,000 years ago.
The reason, brother, why these words have been captured is because he is speaking to me in 2008.
Oh, come on, Bob.
I am reading them now. I listen to them now.
His disciples came to him. If I
am
come
a
to you,
disciple.
If I came to you, Bob, and I said,
I am
Bob,
a disciple.
how are we going to know the end of the world, mate? Tell
Can
us.
I
And you say,
finish?
here you go, Sarah.
Can I finish?
Hang on.
Go on.
You're going to see this, this,
Yep,
this,
yep,
and this.
yep.
And that's what's going to happen
Right.
when you see the end of the world.
What?
And hang on, you were speaking to me. You weren't speaking to my children
What?
2018 years later than you were speaking to me, were
What
you?
happened to the Jewish people in 70 AD?
Is this relevant to the conversation, Bob?
Yes, I promise you.
How?
Okay,
So
what happened?
No, you tell me, because you're
Do
bringing a
you
whole
know?
new argument now.
Do you know what happened
No,
in
no,
70
you
AD?
tell me, you tell me.
Okay, in 70 AD, because of a Jewish revolt that was trying to replicate what the Maccabees did against the Greek empires, or the remnants of Alexandrian Empire, there was a revolt against the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire, in response to this revolt, utterly destroyed the Jewish nation, including the destruction of the temple. Including the destruction of the temple. Christ was talking about the destruction of the temple in apocalyptic terms because it is literally the end of the Jewish system. The Jewish system ended there and then. Because when the temple is destroyed, the Levitical priesthood ends, the system of sacrifice ends, the old covenant ceases to function properly.
Bob, Jesus was talking to his disciples. He was not talking about
Correct.
any Jewish people
Yes.
and any kind of
Yes.
anything that you just said.
Yes.
Jesus was specific talking to his
Yes.
disciples. If all of these people come up on me right here, right
Yep.
now, and ask me a specific question,
Yes.
Sarah, when's the world going to end? And I say, hey guys, it's going to get a bit crazy. This is going to happen. That's going to happen, and
he
you guys
says-
are going to see all
No,
of that.
what does he say?
And then you're going to see me come out the clouds, and I'm
What
going
does
to go.
he say? What does he say? He says, "This generation shall not pass away until these things."
This
have come."
generation, whose generation is
The
that?
concept of generation also
Come on,
speaks.
Bob.
I am
Come on now.
coming. It speaks of epochs. It speaks of ages. There was the generation of Abraham. There was the generation of Moses. There was the generation of Jesus.
So what generation was he talking about?
So he's
To
talking
his-
about.
to his disciples.
He's
Who was he
talking about this generation, the generation
in 2018.
this generation, the generation of grace, which are those who live in the time of grace from
Wow,
Christ's
Bob.
first coming to Christ's second
You're
coming.
telling me that Christ was talking about the generation in 2018, even though his disciples
And-
came to him 2,000 years
And the year in
said,
2000,
hang on,
and the year 10,000, and the year 500.
Can I interject? Does
Bob,
it
come
matter?
on,
Does it matter
man.
either way?
come on, bro.
Right, hold on.
Like-
but let me.
It doesn't make sense. I'm just saying it doesn't make sense.
Right,
sorry.
right,
I'm just saying, let me,
okay.
and I'll finish. It doesn't
Really
make sense because specifically, as I said, reading this book,
Yep.
there are things that don't make sense in this book. So you taking everything from this book for me doesn't make any sense. And I'm showing you why. Because his disciples specifically came to him and asked him a very specific question, and he described exactly what was going to happen in their generation. And he specifically said, "You will see the sign of the coming of man in the clouds, and
Yes.
I shall come back and I shall take you." So if that generation is dead, that means Jesus has already come out of the clouds, taken the disciples, and he's gone. So I don't know what you're waiting for.
So let me.
I don't know what you're waiting on,
I'm
Bob.
waiting for Christ to come on the
He
clouds.
ain't coming.
In glory
He's
with
already
his
come, bro.
angels. No, he hasn't. He
You're
hasn't.
waiting on some other stuff.
So hold on, 1 second.
He told his disciples when he was going to come.
1 second. Let's just deal with something. Let us assume that you're right.
Yes,
Let us
let's do that.
Let us assume,
Let's do that.
for the sake
That
of
works for
argument, to move the argument forward, let us assume that there are some things in the New Testament that don't make sense and can't be reconciled. All right? For the sake of this argument to move it forward, I will give it to you. Okay? Now, hold on 1
I'm
second.
going to take it. You ain't
Sarah,
giving
you
it to me.
take
No,
it.
I'll
You
take
take
it.
it. So, Sarah, here's the thing, bro. Right? That firstly, the belief in the resurrection is not dependent upon the Gospels. The belief in the resurrection is what gave birth to the Gospels, so it does not knock my argument that the resurrection is a historical reality to knock the Gospels. Because
But you're waiting on Jesus'
would you
return.
would you Sarah, would you agree with me?
But
Would
you're
you,
waiting on Jesus' return.
Sarah, would you agree with me? Would you agree with me that belief in the resurrection predates the Gospels?
Yes.
Would you agree with me that belief in the resurrection predates Paul's letters?
Yes.
Right. So therefore, it in no way knocks the central premise of my argument that Christ rose from the dead and people were witnesses to that fact, because you have managed to find, and I'm giving it to you for the sake of the argument,
I'm
a
taking it,
discrepancy.
Bob.
You're taking it. You're taking
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
Right.
I'm taking it.
Let's just say you've found a discrepancy in the text.
Yeah.
My belief is based upon something that predates the text, so my belief in the resurrection stands. You haven't knocked it at all.
No, your belief in the resurrection stands. However,
Thank you.
you're still waiting on Christ to return.
Right.
And I'm saying you can believe in the resurrection. However, Christ's return has already happened
And
according to the actual text.
What is the historical claim, the central claim of the Christian faith?
Like you said, I said Jesus Christ died for your sins, and you said the central
claim of the Christian faith
is that a man died and rose from the dead.
Yes.
That's the central
So
claim.
the essential claim of the Christian
But he ain't
faith...
coming back though.
Now,
Just letting
here's
you
the
guys
thing.
know he's not coming
Here's
back.
the thing.
He's already come.
Here's the thing. If
Matthew 24, read it.
Sister,
he's already come. Stop waiting on him.
If you
He ain't coming back.
if you just let us finish, and then we'll take questions and
So
things.
all three religions believe that two of them believe that Christ is coming back, and the Jews believe that the Messiah, the second coming, is to happen, and this is the period that the Jews need. So in all sects, they believe it's coming.
However,
However,
as
they never
Christians-
read Matthew 24
we
to
as-
see
we
that
as-
he's actually not coming back.
We as
That's the
Christians,
thing.
we as
Matthew 24 is
Christians
talking
don't
about
need
the
to.
generation
We as
when the
Christians
wars will
don't
happen.
need to validate our faith by appealing to Islam,
Just read it.
which
No,
is
no,
a
no,
counterfactual,
Seriously, just read it,
counter-historical religion.
Just read it, seriously.
Read it.
Just read it. Read it.
Read it.
So,
read it in
you
context.
Sarah,
Just read it.
Sarah, the point. I know you've got to go soon.
Yeah, I got to go
Right?
on that too.
So the point that I would leave you with, yeah, is this: if a man 2,000 years ago truly rose from the dead, then this has to change everything about what you believe about reality, about the way that you live, and about what you believe. It has got to change the course of your life, and it has to affect your heart and the temperament of your mind. Because if that man rose from the dead, then all the claims that he makes about himself to be God are validated.
Okay.
All the claims that he makes about himself to be the Messiah are validated. All the claims that he makes about himself as coming back into the future on the clouds of glory with the angels are validated.
No. They're validated according to the time of his disciples, the generation of his disciples.
Depending on how you want to interpret the words world, and depending on how you want to interpret the words generation.
Even though-
I dispute your use of those terms.
Even though it was a private conversation
Yes.
between him and his disciples,
Yes.
and he told them specifically,
Yes.
and not you, Bob the Builder, in 2018, you still think he's speaking to you, and that is amazing to me that you think he's speaking to you when it was a
Yes.
private conversation
And
amongst him and his disciples.
Because
that
the
is what's
apostles,
amazing to me.
Because the apostles, under the guidance of the Holy Spirit, felt it such that this story needed to continue. This is part of the charisma of the church,
But it's lying
that
to people,
Christ
though.
has died, Christ is risen, Christ will come again.
Amen.
That is the kerygma.
Christ has died.
The kerygma,
Christ has risen.
The kerygma predates
Christ
any
ain't coming
letter.
back.
The Christ has died, Christ is risen, Christ will come again. That kerygma predates any gospel, it predates any letter. It was believed by the church before it was ever written down, and nothing you have said has affected that belief or the reasons to believe in it.
I think it has affected it.
Well,
I think it has
I
affected
will
it.
let people make their own mind up, and you obviously have to make your mind up.
Bob, it's been good.
Look after yourself, Sarah. Until next time.
Peace, family, peace.
And that just shows, ladies and gentlemen, that you can have an intelligent, articulate conversation at Speaker's Corner without the shouting and screaming that we often find when Muslims are being challenged about religion.
I'm plotting to stab you now.
Go on.
Yeah, that's my plot.
So I turn my back.
Turn your back.
Right. Go on.
But peace, I'm joking.
Yeah.
Peace.
All right,
Good
you
boy.
look after yourself.
I'm gone. Thanks, Peter. Thank you.
So, I want to pick up on where Sarah left off, because one of the claims that is often made against the Christian faith by particularly the Islamic Dawah team is, where does Jesus claim to be God? Where? We're always being asked, why doesn't he say, I am God, worship me? Well, let me just deal with that for a moment, because we all know that there is cultural imagery that we are all familiar with that allows us to identify the identity of characters without them being stated explicitly. So if I said to you that I wear a blue uniform, carry a baton and a radio, and I have the powers of arrest, who am I saying that I am? Speak up. Police. If I said to you, I wear camouflage, I drive a tank, and I go to war, what am I saying that I am?
Soldier.
A soldier. If I said to you that I sit in judgment of people, sentencing them to prison, what am I saying that I am?
Judge.
A judge. So there are cultural imageries with which we are familiar that when people use them, it's clear about who they are talking about. Jesus did the same in his own time, to speak about himself. And I'm going to give you some examples. And it's from Sarah's own argument, from chapter 24 of Matthew. It says, from verse 29 in chapter 24, but immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from the sky. And the powers of the heavens will be shaken, and then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn. And they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of the sky with power and great glory, and he will send forth his angels with a great trumpet, and they will gather together his elect from the four winds, one end of the sky to the other. This imagery is borrowing directly from an Old Testament passage in Daniel chapter 7. In which it is spoken by the prophet Daniel, I kept looking in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, one like a son of man was coming, and he came up to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him, and to him was given dominion, glory, and a kingdom, that all the peoples and nations and men of every language might serve him. Now, just so you know, in the Septuagint, which is the second BC translation of the Hebrew, so the oldest thing that we have, the word that we translate might serve him is from the Greek latria, which is the word that is used for divine worship or the worship of God. Might serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which means that it doesn't end, which will not pass away, and his kingdom is one which will not be destroyed. This is a divine figure, and Christ is applying that divine figure to himself. And in Matthew, at his trial, when he is being tried by the high priest, he says, I'll just find it for you. The high priest stood, and this is Matthew 26, verse 62 onwards. The high priest stood up and said to him, do you not answer? What is it that these men are testifying against you? But Jesus kept silent, and the high priest said to him, I adjure you, by the living God, that you tell us whether you are the Christ, the Son of God. Jesus said to him, you have said it yourself. Nevertheless, I tell you, hereafter, you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven. Then the priest tore his robes and said, he has blasphemed. What further need do we have of witnesses? Behold, you have now heard the blasphemy. What do you think? And they answered, he deserves death. And the reason why he deserves death is because those that call themselves God, those that blaspheme against God, as you will find in Numbers 14 verse 6, are to be killed. Jesus claims to be the Son of Man, and the Son of Man by the prophet Daniel is a divine figure. It's not blasphemy to claim to be the Messiah. There were Jews claiming to be the Messiah before Jesus, there were Jews claiming to be the Messiah at the time of Jesus, and there were Jews claiming to be the Messiah after Jesus, and we don't have many accounts of those people being killed for blasphemy. So what was the blasphemy? The blasphemy is that Christ takes two Old Testament images and puts them together. The imagery in Psalm 110 and the imagery of Daniel 7. These are Old Testament cultural images that every Jew was familiar with that describe a divine figure. And Jesus was claiming to be that divine figure, which means that Jesus was claiming to be God. Any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
No, are you finished? That's fine.
Yeah.
So,
You have a question?
no, it's not. I'm just confirming what you were just saying. It's claiming now that he was alive, he was dead, and he lives.
Yep.
He's the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end.
Yes.
Only God can be the beginning.
Absolutely, and in Isaiah 45, that's exactly what God says. I am the Alpha and the Omega. So, just leave it running. So, I just want to do a talk on something else, which I think is something that we as Christians need to be thinking about much more.
Come take away everything from your humanity. Man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV. Listen. COE. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV. I don't even listen to Sky TV. I just listen to COE. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV. I don't even listen to Sky Man. Man, just listen to COE. Man, just listen to COE. Man, just listen to COE. If you see me, it's COE. What's over everything? COE.
Man, not even know BBC. Man, not even know ITV. Not even listen to the MUM. They just listen to COE.